Bruh, where's Illumi? So the last time we saw Illumi was exactly 30 chapters ago, which in Hunter x Hunter publishing terms was about 6 years ago. But this was when Illumi and Carlito were caught and detained by Mizaisom and Botabai, who were the two Zodiacs who appeared at the end of the latest chapter. And something really cool about this scene is that it showed us an outdoor area of the Black Whale, where people can recline and just sort of pretend that they're on a cruise instead of sailing directly into the pits of hell. But if you go back on this scene, it gets a little bit confusing. Because the main reason that Illumi and Carlito were detained is because martial law had recently been imposed, but this was only on day 4 of the voyage, and we are now on day 12, when Benjamin's martial law has been activated. And this is because tiers 5 to 3 were already in a state of semi-martial law, which was initiated after the Haley murder started happening. And that's why Benjamin's act is actually called special martial law. And as part of this, Illumi was offered an escort to the higher tiers, but he declined, stating that he had business on tier 3. And as far as we're aware, the only business he has on the Black Whale 1 is to carry out his contract of killing Hisoka. And so this made a lot of sense at the time because it was assumed that Hisoka could only be somewhere between tiers 3 to 5 due to how extremely difficult it is for anyone to cross the barrier between 3 and 2. I mean, as it is, the Phantom Troop are only managing to do this because they've made allies with the Chara and they're using their back passages. But knowing Togashi, Illumi could have non-Hisoka related business aboard as well, or perhaps even a Phantom Troop based mission because he is technically part of their group now, meaning that he could be subject to following commands from Crollo if it serves both of their goals. But at the moment, Illumi has been completely off our radar for the last 8 days of this voyage. He was last spotted on day 4 and it is now day 12. It was reported that he was going to be given a dorm room at the central police station on tier 3 due to the semi-martial law requirements, and I guess that he and Carlito could still be there, but I feel like it's a big ask to keep a professional assassin stationary for more than a week when he's being paid to carry out a job. Then again, due to his prenup with Hisoka, he gets paid either way, even if Hisoka does get offed by someone else, so who knows. Maybe sitting and doing nothing is the most efficient way to make money. But there is also one other Phantom Troop member that we have even less information on, and that would be Machi. She's gone off on her own to find Hisoka, and we haven't heard a single thing about her since. And I imagine that she'll re-emerge into relevancy once we start seriously focusing on what's going to happen with Mr. Hisoka, because Machi is just as, if not more driven than Crollo to kill him. And I'd love to know where she is and how she's going to get around the big boy martial law being implemented right now. I'm calling it now. Tebepa will save Benjamin. I think this is very possible, but it needs a perfect storm of events to happen. Firstly, the reason why it is possible is because Tebepa's guardian spirit beast is a transmuter that can produce, quote, various chemicals, and whilst the TSK-17 might be impossible to prevent under normal real-world medical equipment, that's not necessarily the case for magical Nen substances, because the Nen user doesn't generally create something that can be found easily in the real world, or even at all. But the manga may have also given us a hint that these two plot threads are connected, because Tebepa and her guardian spirit beast were juxtaposed directly with the introduction of TSK-17. You've got 2 pages with Tebepa and her guardian spirit beast on one side, and Balsamilko Might with the TSK-17 on the other. That is probably a big stretch, but at the same time, Togashi is a man who has had 2 years to plan out these 10 chapters, so I would not put micro decisions like this past him. There's 2 big problems with the Tebepa idea though. The first is that Tebepa despises the Benjamin and would need some pretty big convincing to help him. And the second is that her guardian spirit beast requires a research partner, which I believe is now implied to be Kurapika, because as soon as Tebepa agreed to the alliance with him brokered by Longi, the guardian spirit beast appeared in front of Rihan, showing that it now has the confidence to survive and the ability to start excreting its chemicals. With that in mind though, maybe Kurapika could convince Tebepa to make a cure in order to negotiate with Benjamin, because Kurapika's more bloodthirsty days have simmered down, at least until he sees Pyro's head in Saradnik's room. Then things are going to get not good. But Kurapika's goal here is a stalemate, and Benjamin dying is not stale, it is losing. It's not necessarily good because it leaves a big fat power vacuum and a lot of anarchy to be had amongst the remaining princes, so if Benjamin's life is going to be saved, I think that this is a pretty realistic avenue, and it fits pretty perfectly into place, considering that Tebepa assumedly needs Kurapika to be her research partner and agree to what's being done. Has anyone thought about Morena being Hellbell? Contagion is all about murder and getting players to kill more and more people. This with her eye-like eyes. But the first time I heard it, I thought it was ridiculous. And mate, when I think something is ridiculous, that's saying something, because I posted some wild stuff on this channel. But this idea is very much starting to win me over a little bit by bit, because it does make that tiny bit more sense with each and every Morena chapter. So firstly, the premise of this is that Hellbell is a dark continent calamity that is said to infect its prey with homicidal desire, which is almost quite literally what Morena does. She infects her members, who then have a common desire to kill. Of course, the way it's presented to us is that they had that goal to kill initially, before Morena recruited them. However, in the case of Borkson, her common desire to kill only emerged after Morena kissed and infected her with contagion. And of course, the general idea here is for Morena to something destroy the entire world, which is a very dark continent calamity kind of goal to have. And now we know that we shouldn't necessarily trust anything that Morena says, because she's not even Morena Prudhoe. We don't know who this is. Whoever or whatever she is cosplaying Morena. But look, let's go with Occam's razor and say that she is indeed a real person and not some sort of shape-shifting calamity. Even with this, we know that it's possible for calamities to coexist with humans like Nanika does with Alaka. So Morena's backstory about being meat and her being a calamity could both be true. Or Hellbell could not be here at all, but Morena was infected by Hellbell in the human realm. And her contagion ability is the manifestation of that infection, which is going to continue to spread and keep infecting people with homicidal desire until humans are gone. At the moment, I don't know how much I buy into this, but it would be really nice to incorporate some more dark continent elements into this arc because it's really easy to forget. But right now, we're all on a big old boat with the general idea of sailing to the dark continent and getting there at some point. And to date, we have encountered evidence of 4 of the 5 mentioned calamities. We've met Ai, and we've also seen the victims of Zobai, Pap, and Brion. So Hellbell is the only calamity that we have yet to see evidence of. We do know that Hellbell is in the human realm, we just don't know where or what it's been up to. And given his enthusiasm for the Dark Continent, this could all come back to Mr. Beyond's Netero. Given his cursed children, I really wouldn't put it past him to track down a calamity, a Hellbell, and use its homicidal infection for his own purposes. So maybe Morena is Beyond's child who he awakened from birth, but instead of giving her a curse, he infected her with a calamity. Did I understand the chapter in the wrong way? I thought that Hulkenberg got Benjamin's body, and his Nenbeast is there because he is not dead, and they are sharing bodies. Alright, so even if Hulkenberg did get another possession arrow off, which he would need like all of his bros present to do, the chances of him being the transferred soul again are incredibly low. But it is not impossible. There is a very convoluted method where this could be Benjamin that we're seeing and hearing the thoughts of, but Hulkenberg could still exist in there as well. Because if Hulkenberg's body died, which it did, and Might's body died, which it might have, because we've skipped so much time, we don't know, but in that case then Hulkenberg would be stuck in Benjamin's body with Benjamin, and these brothers would be sharing. Meaning that when Benjamin does fall into a coma due to the TSK-17, that would then trigger Hulkenberg to wake up and take command for the final hours before death, for whatever his then useless body could possibly do. It's actually a pretty horrific idea, to be the one conscious for the last moments of the TSK-17. Until proven otherwise though, it's my opinion that a body swap has not occurred, and Hulkenberg has just used his Might disguise to infect Benjamin with the agent. Also, I just wanted to clear something up about this whole situation. In the last video, I said that Togashi has now put a clock on this arc in relation to the time since special martial law has been declared. My belief is that this clock is tied to the lifespan of Benjamin because within that time, he needs to find and kill every single prince to accomplish his goal. Now, obviously, we could just have Benjamin die and have the special martial law fizzle out and carry on the contest, but dramatically, this does feel like the next step up. And I can't see Benjamin dying unceremoniously, martial law being rescinded, and then just going back to the way things were. From here, I feel like Hunter x Hunter can only escalate, and right now, almost every faction does have an immediate plan that they are actively carrying out. It's the first time that on a single day, every group appears to be acting or having action carried out against them. So that's why I think that all of these elements could come together, and in the next 12 to 24 hours, we could conclude the succession contest. A couple of things regarding that. There are some people from that last video who misheard me and thought I was saying that this could conclude in the next 12 to 24 chapters. That I don't see happening, because comparing it to say the Palace Invasion, that whole section of the Chimera Ant arc was around 60 chapters, and there were significantly less characters and individual plot lines being juggled. So even if in world we could end this in a day, in terms of publishing, that could be a decade. And secondly, there's also a couple of people who have pointed out that the contest cannot end so soon because the journey to the new continent is supposed to take 2 months. I don't really feel the same way. I don't see any reason why the succession contest can't end sooner and then the rest of the journey to the new continent is covered in an epilogue. Also note that the new continent is different from the Dark Continent. I've got to mention that every time because it's confusing. But it's only after reaching the new new continent and dumping the Karkin Empire that we're setting sail properly for the Dark Continent. Borkson had the option to ask, will there be any consequences if I cheat in this game, or something like that. She definitely did, and I've got a couple more things to say about the Borkson cheating scandal. The first of which is that there are a lot of people on the internet calling out this fictional character for not asking about the cheating before doing the cheating, as if it was some sort of blind spot for someone so smart. But it's not that Borkson didn't think to ask, it's that the act of asking would have flagged that she was planning on cheating. In general, if you ask your opponent if you can cheat, then they're probably going to be on the lookout for you cheating. And then that cancels out the point of asking because you can no longer cheat. I think that this is a classic mistake made by someone who hasn't had enough experience in the world of Nen. There is no amount of brains that could have saved Borkson from this situation. An experienced Nen user would have just assumed that there would be consequences for breaching the rules of an ability, and I think that Borkson was thinking of this game more like a real game of cards, without that supernatural referee keeping an eye on things. On that as well, I've seen a lot of talk that Morena knew that Borkson was cheating, and just let it play out because, well, that's good for me, Morena. But I don't think that's the case either. I think that Morena was genuinely surprised to discover that Borkson was cheating. And then after the ability enforced that, Morena went back through the game and went, oh, it was probably there. And look, if I'm Morena with a Nen ability that has built-in anti-cheat conditions, then I could afford to be as trusting as I wanted. So I think that this was the mechanism of the Nen ability detecting the deception and kicking into action. Either way, I am very disappointed in Borkson. She spent this whole game accusing the other side of cheating, both very verbally and with her inner monologues. This is classic projection. If someone accuses you of doing something more than once, then it means that they've either done that themselves or are seriously considering doing it. I really love the narrative device of setting up all these dominoes to start knocking each other down, only to skip to the point where the dominoes are scattered, and now we need to figure out exactly what we missed. I'm glad you like it, but I am pretty sure that we are going to go back. We're going to put those dominoes back up again, and we're going to see how they knock down, because we skipped a lot of stuff. At the moment, we've skipped, at least half a day on tier 1 whilst playing the negotiation game. What I will say is that I think this is a really fun chapter to begin a hiatus on, because it gives us so much to speculate about and a ton of gaps to fill in with wild hunter-based thoughts. But I think we're going to go back in time and use this established framing device, being the martial law timer. And instead of saying X minutes after special martial law was declared, we're going to cut back to Kurapika's situation, and it's going to say something like 4 hours before special martial law was declared. I just can't see Togashi skipping these intricate events, because drawing those chapters is his drive to keep going. He revels in lingering in these hyper-specific situations, and he's not the kind of author to speed up a plot to reach its conclusion, although in the past he has been known to abruptly end arcs and events at unexpected moments. But those are two different things. It's actually surprisingly rare that Togashi leaves a plot thread dangling, and it's quite a talent to end arcs both abruptly and wrap up all of the plot points you set up. Was the identity of Silent Majority ever revealed? Did I miss it, or was it just glazed over? No, it hasn't been revealed yet. And that's another reason why I think we're going to go back in time to find out who it was. Because we've skipped Kurapika's second Nen class, where assumedly the mystery of Silent Majority has been solved, that or it hasn't, and a ton more people have been killed by it. I've actually been meaning to do a Silent Majority video for at least 2 years now. I'll get around to it because there's actually not that many people left who the ability could belong to. Definitely the worst arc. Let's face it, Hunter x Hunter has been over for a long time. Ooh, hard disagree. In fact, I think that at this stage you could genuinely argue that the Succession Contest is the best arc in Hunter x Hunter. You probably wouldn't quite get there because it's not complete in Chimera Ants. And this is probably just my bias because the Succession Contest is the only arc that I've had the pleasure of reading as it's released. But every time I go back to it, it's just the most exciting and most intriguing overall experience I've had in Hunter x Hunter. But more importantly, this comment did make me ask the question, well, what actually is the worst arc in Hunter x Hunter? And I have a hard time coming up with an answer. I used to have very strong opinions about both the Hunter Exam and Greed Island being way down there, but I've come to appreciate them both a lot more over time. But at the same time, I don't really know what could replace them at the bottom. Hunter x Hunter is just such a strong piece of media in general. Even the worst of it is only the worst by technicality, because in any group of things there's always going to be a best and there's always going to be a worst, even if all of those things are way above average. Is it possible that everyone will end up dying on this boat before even reaching the Dark Continent? So as far as I'm aware, that is actively the plan. King Nasabi has purposely gathered 200,000 people to be used as sacrifices for the prosperity of the Empire, and at this stage, I don't even think that Nasubi was ever planning to go to the Dark Continent himself. That is beyond Netero's goal, and he may have convinced Nasubi to finance this trip by working out how to host the most powerful succession contest in Kakin history. I'm currently in the camp where I believe that the Black Whale 1 itself will sink, and that's why there's this ship sitting up the top, which is tier 1, but that's where all the survivors could flee to, and that's what we could be left with to make the rest of the journey. Actually, I believe the plan is to change ships after reaching the new continent. After that point, they're supposed to get on board a different ship captained by Moral to get to the Dark Continent. So the Black Whale 1 is unfortunately intended to be and probably will be disposable. Every time I check back in with Hunter x Hunter, it sounds like every chapter is a completely different anime. Yeah, after a certain point, every arc in Hunter x Hunter may as well be a completely different series. It's almost like a handful of different series that are set in the same universe. Like you've got one brighter, happier, and more innocent series focusing on these rookie hunters taking their exam, and then you've got a much darker, grittier sister series about chimera ants taking place in isolated parts of the same world. You've also got an underworld thriller happening with the Phantom Troop, and a political thriller taking place on a ship somewhere isolated in the middle of nowhere. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, we've even got a series about card games loosely connected to everything else, and of course takes part in an isolated part of the world. And that's why Hunter x Hunter has managed to stay fresh even though it was first published in 1998. It keeps changing and evolving just as Togashi himself does, and every new arc or every new incarnation is one step closer to perfection in my opinion as a man on the internet.